earth will sing your praises. All the earth will sing your praises.
Well, this past week I heard somebody tell me, I like it when you tell stories or jokes when you start out. It keeps my attention. So I received an email from Mike Meyer, and so I thought it was worthwhile sharing. By the way, I'm kind of liking the seasonal orange section over here. you know, you're kind of working it really well. That's good. Mike Meyer sent me this email, and so I thought it was a UP farm kid joins the Marines and wrote this letter to Mom and Dad. It was actually a Wisconsin farm kid, but I changed it to UP. So, dear Mom and Pa, I'm well. Hope you are. Tell Brother Walt and Brother Elmer the Marine Corps beats working for Old Man Minch by a mile. Tell them to join up quick before all the places are filled. I was restless at first because you get to stay in bed till nearly 6 a.m., But I'm getting so I like sleeping late. Tell Walt and Elmer all you do before breakfast is smooth your cot, shine some things. No hogs to slop, feed to pitch, mash to mix, wood to split, fire to make. Practically nothing. Men got to shave, but it's not so bad. There's warm water. Breakfast is strong on trimmings like fruit juice, cereal, eggs, bacon, etc., but kind of weak on chops and potatoes, ham, steak, fried egg, plant pie, and other regular food. But tell Walt and Elmer you can always sit by the two city boys that live on coffee. Their food plus yours hold you till noon till you get fed again. It's no wonder these city boys can't walk much. We go on route marches, which the platoon sergeant says are long walks to harden us. If he thinks so, it's not my place to tell him different. The route march is about as far as to our mailbox at home. Then the city guys get sore feet and we all ride back in trucks. The sergeant's like a school teacher. He nags a lot. The captain's like the school board. The majors and colonels just ride around and frown. They don't bother you none. This next will kill Walt and Elmer with laughing. I keep getting medals for shooting. I don't know why. The bullseye is near as a big chipmunk head and don't move. It ain't shooting at you like the Higgett boys at home. All you do is lie there all comfortable and hit it. You don't even load your own cartridges. They come in boxes. Then we have what they call hand-to-hand combat training. You get to wrestle with them city boys. I have to be real careful, though. They break easy. It ain't like fighting with that old bull at home. I'm about the best they got, except for that Tug Jordan from over at Silver Lake. I only beat him once. He joined up at the same time as me, but I'm only 5'6" and 130 pounds, and he's 6'8" and near 300 pounds dry. Be sure to tell Walt and Elmer to hurry and join before other fellers get into this setup and come stampeding in. Signed, your loving daughter, Alice. I thought that was cute. Okay, let me get started here. We're picking up where we left off last week in John 10. You know, and as I was looking this over and praying about it, thinking, man, there is just a huge amount of preaching material here. So we're not going to get it all. So you're going to get what I give you. We got to understand some things. And before I get started too far, I'm going to have a video clip. So we're going to have somebody to get the lights in a little bit here. Zeke said he can go back and get that since he's in the back row. Anyway, I'll give you the nod. Like that, okay? Anyway, in ancient Israel, sheep herding was a pretty familiar scene. It was a pretty common sight. In fact, when I was in Israel, and I don't know if you can see this very well, I took this picture of a sheep pen at Nazareth Village, and in fact, that's where the video clip comes from. Nazareth Village is in Jerusalem, and it is the others are over here. Go just get the, maybe one of the middle ones, maybe there, Zeke, that'd be great. See how he does. Can you see it better? It's getting better? There you go. Anyway, Nazareth Village is in Jerusalem, and it's a village put together by the Mennonites and depicting first century Nazareth. Excuse me, it's in Nazareth. It's depicting first century Nazareth. And so you get a kind of an idea. And so they built this sheep pen, and they actually, in the village, there's sheep in it. And you notice there's no gate, but this is a little bit, just an idea of what it looked like back then. And having sheep was a pretty common sight back then. Understand that the land in Israel was used more for shepherding sheep and goats than it was for planting crops. It was dry. They don't get a lot of rain. And because of that, goat herds and flocks were really seen all over. They've been seen in the country for centuries. In fact, if you go there right now, you can be driving down a highway and see Bedouin herders, sheep herders, and they're still doing it the same way that they always used to do. The life of a shepherd, understand, is hard. They never had 2-week vacation. They never got a day off. They worked 24/7. They had to face a lot of elements. They had to deal with wolves, deal with thieves, robbers, as well as other wild animals that might come along. And because there wasn't much grass, they're constantly moving their sheep to a place to find grass to eat, to graze. So Jesus does this really great thing when he told stories. He used what was common to them, and he applied it. And so he's using the illustration of shepherding and sheep, and I imagine the people in that day, they said, yeah, we can relate to this. And then he applies it to make the point of their relationship with God and God's relationship to his people. And he does a great thing with this. So we want to take a look in your Bible. If you're not open to John 10, please open there, would you please, right now. In fact, Zeke, you can go ahead and turn those lights back on. Oh, hey, hang on. I'm going to get that video in a little bit, so we'll just keep it off. Okay, then you can do it. Thank you. John 10. I want you to follow along in this scripture. Here, we understand that Jesus, the sheep that Jesus is talking about in their culture, in their day, weren't necessarily used for slaughter like we might think. The sheep that they used back in that day were used for wool. So they could, for the looms, and they can have clothes and things like that. So a lot of the sheep weren't used for meat. In fact, so because of that, a lot of the sheep were with the same shepherd for a long time to get the wool off the sheep and shear the sheep so they have clothes to keep them warm. And because they're with the shepherd for a long time, the shepherd would usually name the sheep. You know, and he'd name them according to maybe markings or maybe according to character traits. You know, one of them might have been called idiot. No. But, you know, he named them according to some personality that they might have had. And they would do it that way. Right here's a video clip from the same place.
So it's interesting that when Jesus compares us to the sheep, you know, it's so apt for us, isn't it? We so easily get into trouble, you know. A couple of weeks ago, I was to be the shepherd too, and these goats, they were of course going everywhere, and the sheep were just following because that's what they do, and they were going all different directions, going way over there, and nothing I could do to keep them in line. And then this shepherd comes walking down from the terraces, and he starts calling out one Arabic word to them, "Die, die." And immediately all of them, all 6 of them, the sheep, 3 goats and 3 sheep, turn to him and go, "Bah, bah." And then they go to us. And I was like, what?
Then you knew what Jesus was saying, right?
Exactly. I knew exactly what he was saying. They knew his voice. He had been their shepherd for like 2 years previously. You notice there's no door on this either.
Yeah.
When Jesus
Is it
says,
always that
"I am
way?"
the gate," he's actually referring to himself as a shepherd.
Okay.
In this way, he stands here and they don't come out. Nothing else goes in as long as he's standing there watching out.
There's a sermon, preachers.
Right?
Here they come.
Well, there come the sheep following them.
Sheep do that.
Look at that.
They all do that.
All follow.
Okay, we're following Philip. Let's go there.
He's going to go round up the sheep.
So there's a lot of wind noise. So in case you didn't hear it, he was saying how go ahead and get those lights, please. He was being a shepherd once, and the sheep were just all over, and he couldn't get them back in the pen. And so a real shepherd came along, and he started in Arab, said, "Dike, dike," and the sheep would come to him. You know, they do listen to the voice. They do follow that same shepherd. They do know him. So in that time, they understood what Jesus was talking about. So Jesus is talking about the shepherd, and he says what? Look at John. Go back up to the top. It says in verse 3 and 4, it says, and the sheep listen to the voice of the shepherd. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. The sheep understood the voice. You know, that's great news for you and me. If you're a follower of Jesus, the good news is that the shepherd knows your name. He knows who you are. He knows everything about you. He knows your tendencies, your idiosyncrasies. He knows your name. The shepherd knows the name of all of his followers. He knows the name of all his followers in Alaska. He knows the name of all of his followers in London, Syria, Iran, Africa, South America. He knows the name of the followers. And I think that is really cool, that he knows your name. In fact, in the book of Revelation, it tells us that one day all his followers are going to get the glory, and what's going to happen? He's going to give you a smooth stone, a white stone, and it's going to have a new name on it. It's going to have your spiritual name on it because he knows your name. He's all about relationships. Aren't names and relationships kind of working together? You know somebody's name, you start having relationships with it. You don't know somebody's name, it's pretty hard to have a relationship with somebody, isn't it? Now, the sad thing is, though, we live in a world where you're just a number. You want to sign up for something? I need your social security number. I need your phone number. We need your address. We need some kind of identification number to make sure you say you're who you are. I woke up this morning, I'm pretty sure I know who I am. But they say, I want to make sure. You know, what is a number? A number is dehumanizing. It's cold. It's indifferent. It's nothing else. You know what the other thing in Revelation tells us about numbers? While one day the followers of Jesus are going to get a white stone with a name on it, new name on it, those who aren't following Jesus are going to take the number of a beast. Not going to be able to buy, sell, or trade or anything without that number. That's interesting. We have the number here that the world wants to use and wants. Numbers. You're all numbers. Computerization does that to us. And then you have name over here. Jesus is about names, relationships. The world is about numbers and something that's cold and heartless. People like their names. We all like our name. A name is personal because it was given to us by people who... Jesus, here in this text, seizes on this very thing that, yeah, people like... Don't you like to hear your name called? I used to, except in school. I mean, you know. But we like... You may say, no, not really, Tim. It's no big deal. No, it is. Your name is a big deal because we like to hear our name called, and Jesus understood that. When I was in high school, I worked at a Pizza Inn restaurant, and as I was moving up the ranks in the corporate ladder, climbing the corporate ladder from dishwasher to pizza maker to cashier, Max, the owner, he said, Tim, one thing you need to know is get used to knowing who the regulars are and call them by their name because people like to hear their name. Cheers, where everybody knows your name, right? People like to hear their name. And he was so right. Everybody likes to hear that. And so not only does the good shepherd know us by name, but the sheep, it says, know his voice. We know his voice. And as you look at this passage here, we have voices and names running out through this passage, all through the passage. You know, talks about knowing his voice, knowing names. The sheep know his voice. He knows his sheep. And all this is running through him in this passage. We can be in a crowd. You're in a crowd of people that's talking and murmuring, and somebody that you know calls your name. You peek, your head, ears prick up, you know, and yeah, I know that voice. Kathy calls my name in a crowd. If she calls it loud enough, my hearing's not so good. I can usually hear, but, you know, she also calls me another name sometimes in a crowd. That's not what you're thinking. It's not a bad name, okay? It's not knucklehead. I don't care what you say. If she'll call me by my middle name and I really pick up. It's, you know, it's like she'll say, and she does this. She does this just to show people. She'll watch this, watch this. She'll say, Owen, and I go, yeah. I'm like a puppy dog. You know, I mean, she can say Tim or Timothy or something like that, and I don't pay much attention. In fact, we were one time going to Florida years ago. Went to Florida, and we were coming into the terminal in the airport, and I told Kathy, I said, you know, it is great that I don't know anybody here. We're going to be, because we were really busy at church. We were busy with a lot of stuff going on. It was great that I don't know anybody here, and we're just going to have a vacation. It's going to be wonderful. You know, we get in the terminal. All of a sudden I heard Tim Miller. Hey, Tim Miller. Kathy said, somebody's calling for you. I said, nah, I don't know anybody here. I don't know that. I don't recognize the voice. So I didn't respond because I didn't recognize. You know how average Tim Miller is? Tim Miller is an average name. There's got to be, back in Indiana, I had 3 or 4 of them that were just, getting wrong phone calls, this and that. So I didn't think anything of it. Finally, it came up. It was a guy from high school I hadn't seen in years. Like, I mean, can't I go anywhere? And that's exactly what she said. Can't we go anywhere without you knowing somebody? And she didn't say it that way. She was much nicer about it. But that's my take on it. Anyway, but we hear the voice of somebody who knows us, somebody we have a relationship with, and we respond to that name, don't we? In the crowd, we can pull that out. But there's trouble. There's a problem with us, too. In our culture today, there's a lot of voices out there, aren't there? There are a lot of voices vying for your attention, a lot of voices looking for you. Our culture has a voice by itself saying, no, this is the way we ought to be. This is the way we ought to be. This is the way you need to think. This is what you need. Our society has attention. I drive here and I see the voices crying out, mining, no mining. And we're having these kind of voices and things happening. I see the voices of TV. Do you watch Wolf Blitzer or do you watch Bill O'Reilly? We have the voices of other people on TV. We have, the Ellen DeGeneres. We have the Conan O'Connor and all those people on TV that want your attention. We have the voices of commercialism. We have the voice of self-interest that's calling us all the time. Do what's best for you. Don't worry about anybody else, right? Voices are constantly vying for your attention, and sometimes it's hard to hear the voice of the Good Shepherd. In the middle of all that, we lose out on the voice of the Good Shepherd. I shared with you a couple weeks ago about how I hadn't been hearing a voice because I had to get some things right in life. I'll tell you what, we have to do that all the time to make sure we're tuned to the Good Shepherd. And the question I have for you, are you hearing his voice? Which voice are you listening to? Because I will guarantee you this, any voice that is not the voice of the Good Shepherd, Jesus Christ, is a voice that can very easily lead you astray. It's a voice that can very easily take you someplace you don't want to, you don't need to go. We need to tune out those other voices. What voice are you hearing? It's important for us to understand that. I know some people don't agree with me in this, and that's perfectly fine. Voices of culture. We have Halloween coming up here. Most of you know how I am about Halloween, but you know what? Kathy and I never subscribed to those voices of saying, oh, it's okay. And for some people, you're strong enough, able to handle that. I understand that. But I'm going to tell you what, I've never thought dabbling with a cult and things that are wrong is a good idea. It's like stay away from fire. It's like, we got a bunch of people with a room full of Ebola. Yeah, I'm just going to go in there because I would be fine. No, I don't dabble with that stuff. But the voice of the culture says, no, that's okay. Doesn't it? The voice of culture says a lot of things are okay. And as long as we keep listening to the voice of culture today says, I'm going to step on toes here, and I'm sure divorce is okay. The voice of culture says this sin's okay, that's okay. Divorce, and I understand why people get divorced. I understand why people do some of the things they do. And sometimes it's nothing you can help. Sometimes it's out of our control. I get all that. But I also get that God has a plan for us to rise above that, to get above that. But we only do that as we listen to his voice. When Jesus says, stop here. When Jesus says, stay here. listening to that voice. I think of Ezekiel. Ezekiel or Elisha had done, Elijah had done some great miracles. And he went on the run from Jezebel. After he kills 400 prophets of Baal, he goes on the run from Jezebel. God says, meet me in the mountain. What happened, if you know that story? There's a big storm, but it says God wasn't there. There's a big wind, God wasn't there. There was fire, God wasn't in the fire. There's a still, small voice, and God was there. So often, the voice of God is small and still in the midst of all the other voices that are just clamoring. I think of the story of Tony Dungy when he went to become a coach of the Colts, the Indianapolis Colts. One of the first meetings he said to the players, he said, gentlemen, this is my voice. I don't speak any louder than this. I won't yell at you. If you want to know your instructions, you'll listen to this voice. And they won a Super Bowl. They listened to the voice. They had to. I've always been impressed by that type of thinking. I want to look at another thing that's pretty cool in this text here. Verse 16. And from the Message, it says this. Jesus is talking. He says, you need to know that I have other sheep in addition to those in this pen. I need to gather and bring them too. They'll also recognize my voice. Then it will be one flock, one shepherd. You know what he's doing here? He is giving a prophetic word that you and I and other people who are not Jewish are going to be in the sheep pen, that he's going to bring Gentiles in to the pen to all be under them. Because at this point in time, he's talking to Jewish people. And now he's saying something that Pharisees aren't really cool about. He said, those people out there, the unclean people, are going to be part of my pen too. Why? Because God loves everybody. Jesus died for everybody. And he wants all of us. And I think this is really cool prophetic word that he's giving for us. It's come to pass finally, hasn't it? There's two kinds of shepherd in Jesus' day, and he's talking about them here. He talks about the one kind that was a member of the household that owned the sheep. It might have been a son. It might have been a daughter. Believe it or not, like in Genesis 29, Rachel, she was tending sheep for her family. It might have been a servant who was considered a family member, just almost like a family member. The second type of shepherd he's talking about is a hired hand. A hired hand is not really totally loyal to the job. It's a job. And if there's any danger coming his way, the hired hand is going to turn tail and run. He's going to take care of his own hide, let alone the sheep. And Jesus points out that that's what a hired hand does. If he sees thieves or he sees a beast coming, the sheep are on their own. I'm going to take care of myself first. And Jesus makes the point that the good shepherd doesn't run away. The good shepherd willingly stays to defend his sheep. Why? Because they're his. They're his sheep. It doesn't matter if it's a large herd. It doesn't matter if it's a small herd. He's there for them. He knows the sheep can't defend themselves. He knows that they can't do anything about a wolf, a robber, or anybody. They look to the shepherd for protection, and he is there. And he does it because they belong to him and his Father. And the good news is he does that for us. In those times when you think that, Jesus, where are you? He's there. In those moments when you think that he's far away, I want you to understand this. Jesus will never be any farther or any closer to you than he is right now. Right now. He can't get further away. He can't get any closer because he's with you always. We're the ones who tend to put that gap in there, don't we? We're the ones who put distance between us and him. So Jesus doesn't run. No, he's there to protect. When the enemy comes, he's not turn-tailing running. He's staying there and he's fighting for you and for me. And that's good news to know that battle that we got to go, whatever is going on in life, he's there. He is with you. You know, it's one thing to talk about how good a shepherd is and how much he'll do for the sheep. But it's a totally other thing for that shepherd to be willing to risk his life for his own sheep so they can escape death. King David is one of the first shepherds we see in the Bible. Only he's not king at this time. He's just a kid. He's a scrawny kid. The Bible tells us about him. And in the Bible, it talks about, Samuel's looking for the next king of Israel. And he goes to David's family and he said, "Yeah, you got to, I need to find the next king of Israel here in your sons." And he looks at all the boys and these guys aren't it. He said, "You got any other kids around here?" He said, "Yeah, I got 1/10 of the sheep." "Well, go get him." "He's pretty scrawny, just a little kid." "Go get him." And the Bible says he's ruddy in complexion, which I'm really not convinced anybody knows what ruddy means. There's different ideas what ruddy means. But anyway, so he's a scrawny kid and he anoints him. Now, that goes on to tell about the courageous acts that David does as a shepherd. How he kills a bear and he kills a lion. See, I think that David understood what the anointing was on his life, that it came from God, and that God would protect him. And David knew that he wouldn't die during that time. In fact, David goes boldly before Goliath and starts talking trash. You, and he just calls them names and talks trash to him. And, "When I'm done with you, the birds are going to be pecking out your eyeballs," and all this stuff, right? So he's talking trash to him, and he's not afraid of Goliath. And how many know the outcome for that? Because I believe it's because he understood that he was anointed and God had a plan for him, and he knew he wouldn't lose his life. But Jesus knew for certain that in order for him to be the good shepherd, he would have to lose his life. He didn't have a choice. It wasn't totally that Jesus would have to die. It was the meaning of his death that was also part of his decision. Jesus said, "The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep." Most people would be willing to give their lives, most of you for your loved one. I would take a bullet for my family. I would take a bullet for Kathy in a heartbeat. That wouldn't even be a thought. I would do that. And we have a lot of stories that prove that people do those things. Stories that you read about somebody running into a burning house and saving a family. Somebody jumping into a raging river to save a family member from drowning. We have lots of stories that prove that people would do that. But the point is that Jesus was making about his relationship with us is that he loves you and he loves me so much. He knows our names. And he willingly didn't just run into a burning house, didn't just jump into a raging river and maybe save himself. He willingly gave up his life for me and you and everybody who doesn't know Jesus. He gave up his life for them. He is not a coward. He doesn't find excuses to keep from helping you and me. He doesn't turn tail and run when we have problems. No, he comes to our aid. He's very quick about defending us. Right now, do you know what he's doing right now? He's defending you in heaven. Did you know that? Satan is saying, "There's Luella. Look what Luella did." And Jesus says, "Father, I died for her." Satan is saying, "There's Sierra. Look what Sierra did. Father, I died for her." He's saying, Mike and Ron and Lester. He's saying all this because he's the accuser of the brethren, it says. And Jesus is the defender for you and me because he laid down his life for us. So my question is, I had a question about which voice are you following? The other question is Jesus your shepherd? That's the question. That's the question. Back in the days of shepherds, occasionally, if a young lamb would walk away, get lost or whatever, you know what the shepherd would have to do? Break a leg. Then the shepherd would carry that lamb, set the leg and carry that lamb wherever he went, developing this relationship, but keeping the lamb from running away again so that the lamb would always be safe. Now that sounds terrible, to break the leg. Sometimes that's what he's got to do for us. we've run. We've quit listening to the voice. And we look at this thing over here that's got our attention, and we get away from the rest of the flock. We get away from the shepherd, and we get into trouble. How many know that sometimes it requires getting a leg broke to set us straight? That's hard. But in the middle of that process, that relationship that a good shepherd has, carrying that lamb around his neck for weeks until that leg is healed, that relationship is built and it becomes pure and beautiful and wonderful and lovely. So when things happen and we blow it, how many know that we do that sometimes? Don't be afraid if you get a broken leg, because I'm going to tell you, it's a sweet and wonderful thing when the shepherd loves you enough to call you back. Who's your shepherd? Are you hearing his voice? If you've never made the decision for a shepherd, it's got to be made. You can be a number or have a name. Only the shepherd will give you a name. Let's pray. Father God.